I sat down with Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs here in Arizona this week to discuss that and more. Governor, welcome to Fox News Sunday. Thank you for making time for us because this is a very busy week for you with a major golf tournament, the Super Bowl. How has your initial foray as governor been?
Well, there couldn't be a more exciting time to be the governor of Arizona. As you mentioned, the Super Bowl. What a way to walk into this office and to really showcase our state, not just to the rest of the country, but the world. This is going to be broadcast in 200 countries and several languages. So we're really excited.
So taking on the governor's office, you have a slew of huge issues that meet you on day one in the door. Arizona is one of the states most impacted by the border situation. So let's talk about that, because under the previous governor, he was a Republican. He did busing. You said it was a waste of taxpayer money and a political stunt. But NPR now notes that many Democrat governors and mayors are considering the same thing. They say reality has helped shift the politics of transporting migrants. So is that what happened? The reality for you of the situation, the strain on your local border communities and that kind of thing, did that change in your mind a position on whether it's okay or not to be transporting people out of the state?
Yeah, we've continued the program, but I think with a more humane and more efficient spin on it. This money was appropriated by the legislature to specifically bus these legal asylum seekers. And so our decision was to get them where they need to go, to their sponsor or where they have resources and support, instead of just putting them on a bus to D.C., which is expensive. It's days of travel with lodging and food expenses. We want to get them where they need to go. And that's providing relief to these communities that need it, but also a more humane response to these folks.
So what about those who point to some of the federal policies that we have and they say it's a magnet? What about Arizonans who may think, okay, don't use our tax dollars to invite people here and then tell them we're going to give them a paid trip to where they actually want to go within the state? Isn't that an attractive pull at a time when we're seeing record numbers of illegal immigration at the border?
I mean, it certainly could be seen that way. This is money that was appropriated by our Republican legislature in the previous legislative term at the governor's request, and to do this busing program. So it's already appropriated money. I want to focus on how we use the taxpayer resources in the best way possible to address the needs of the impacted communities, but then continue to push Washington to actually solve this issue.
Yeah, Governor Polis, Colorado, a Democrat as well, he was doing busing until Chicago and New York asked him to stop sending people there because they are feeling overwhelmed and dealing with the reality that many of your border communities deal with. But he has put the blame on the federal government. He says they haven't gotten it together on immigration or border security. He blames the feds. Do you?
Absolutely. This is an issue the can has been kicked down the road for decades by both parties in Washington. Solving our immigration crisis could help with the economy, help with inflation. We need real solutions.
So the idea, again, we talked about of a magnet. You announced something in your State of the State address, a $40 million plan for students who are here illegally but be able to go to college with assistance here in Arizona. The House Majority Leader here, who is a Republican, said this about that plan. He said, Governor Katie Hobbs in her State of the State stated that she would like to invest $40 million to help pay for illegal immigrants to attend college in Arizona. What about legal citizens of Arizona or any other state?
Yeah, we absolutely increased funding for Arizona's Promise Scholarship Program, which helps Arizona students. But our plan to create this scholarship program for Dreamers is right in line with Arizona voters who overwhelmingly passed a provision in this last election to provide in-state tuition for Dreamers. These are Arizona students who went to Arizona schools and high schools and should be afforded the same opportunities as other Arizona students. They're not eligible for federal assistance, including Pell Grants.
Is it a magnet, though? When you look at all these other programs and people say if they know they can get across the border, of course people want their children to get an education.
Well, we're talking about many students who probably came when they were infants, before they had any control over the decision, and who went to Arizona schools their whole life. This is the only country that they know. They're not the ones who made the choice to come here. And they deserve the opportunity in the country that they call home.
So let's talk about education K through 12 here in Arizona, because you're getting heat for potentially trying to roll back the voucher system here, which gives people a portion of what would be spent in public schools and allows them to take that elsewhere to use for their students. Here's what Arizona State President Warren Peterson has to say. It would be a huge debacle and mistake for her to eliminate the ESA program because you have a ton of minorities and you have a ton of low-income people. You have a lot of her base that benefit very much from the ESA. He says, you're going to hurt the people that are your supporters.
Well, I'll start by saying that regardless of your philosophy on whether taxpayer dollars should go to public or private schools, this is going to bankrupt our state. And many independent analysis have showed that. And we're not calling for a repeal of the entire program. We're just calling for a repeal of the universal expansion. And the folks that President Peterson cited in the quote that you just shared, they're not actually benefiting from this program. There's no evidence that shows that. And for the most part, these families, regardless of getting a private school voucher, they're not able to afford the gap in tuition that exists with this program. And so largely wealthy families that are already sending their kids to private school and can already afford the tuition are the ones who are getting this subsidy for private school.
So you talk about the financial impact on the state, and we looked around. It looks like estimates on what you spend on public school students, and you probably know off the top of your head, but it's in the $9,000 to $10,000 range. What you would pay out on the ESA vouchers would be $7,000. So this comes from an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal, and they cite the Common Sense Institute, and they talk about the people who've taken these vouchers and left and are not anymore going to be in that pool for public school students in the roughly $9,000 to $10,000. Yeah. They say the Common Sense Institute calculates that this decline generates more than $500 million in annual statewide savings, more than offsetting the $377 million annual projected cost of the full ESA program. I'm not great at math, but what they're saying here, by their calculation, is it would actually save the state money.
Well, I don't dispute their math, but they're not looking at the whole picture. And many of these students that are applying for and receiving these vouchers are in districts that aren't getting the per pupil funding from the state. They're just relying on the property tax base. So it's not hitting the bottom line of their school districts at all, but it's pulling money out of the entire system. And as a result, the school system that roughly 80% of families and students still continue to choose in Arizona, the public district school system, is being robbed of those resources. And that is creating an unequal playing field where those resources aren't going to the schools that need it the most.
Okay, so I want to play something that the state House Majority Leader said in response to your plan. I think this was his response to your State of the State address. Okay.
We also think it's only right that Arizona students have the same choice that Governor Hobbs had attending a private school, which she credits for helping her build a better life.
A reference there to the private Catholic high school that you went to. So why shouldn't all students have a chance at what you said was so important in your own life?
Look, I grew up in a working class family. This was well before any of this public assistance for private school existed, and my parents made that choice. I begged them to send me to public school, and we sacrificed a lot. There were times in my family that we were on food stamps, and so it was a choice that they made, and they struggled to make that choice. What I want is for every student in the state of Arizona, no matter where they live, to have access to high quality public education. And with this universal voucher system, that's not happening.
But if their system is failing, if their public school is failing, no to giving them a chance to go somewhere else like you did?
The schools are failing because we are failing to invest in them. They're being starved of resources.
Okay, I want to ask you quickly about the debt ceiling, which isn't directly involved for the states, but the National Governors Association put out a statement this week. We call on both the administration and Congress to consider serious long-term reforms that will reduce the national debt and put the country on more sustainable fiscal footing because, of course, federal funding flows to things that you have to get done here in the state. You can't go out and print money. You guys have to balance your budget. So advice for Washington.
Well, Washington needs to deal with this issue both in the short term and the long term. So yes, we need long-term solutions, but we need to make sure that we have financial stability now, and that involves increasing the debt ceiling so that we can pay our obligations, not default on our debt, and make sure that there's financial stability.
We'll see if they listen what you have to say. Governor, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.